Hello, SaaS Talk. It sounds like we have a lot of people still in line to eat. I don't blame them, but thanks for your commitment to this session, for coming early, on time. So it's a privilege for me to start this panel with two amazing CEOs. We got a chance to know each other a little bit over the last few days, so we'll try to get some great actionable learnings for you. The topic is build and scale your startup. You've probably heard this before, but we'll focus on some of the mistakes, some of the things you want to avoid as you build and as you scale your startup. So my name is Ludovic. Ulrich. I work for Salesforce. I'm part of the platform app exchange ecosystem team, and I'm in charge of engaging with startup ecosystem globally. I'm based in San Francisco, even though I'm a French guy, so I'm particularly excited to see what's going on in Europe right now and this ecosystem crystallize. So before we go into the panel, I just wanted to share with you some of the learnings in a few minutes with you. So first of all, defining long-term success. That's in the title of the session. So that's where Salesforce is today. It's a massive company, 26,000 employees. It's a great success story, obviously. So hopefully we wish you the same. We wish that we have more SaaS companies like Salesforce coming out of Europe, and that's one of the things that my team is trying to help, of course, modestly. So what's success? That's kind of one way to look at success for Salesforce, the numbers, recognition, etc. But the one thing I can tell you is that to get to that success, it was not easy back in 1999 when Mark Benioff started the company. And I would argue that it has never been easier to create a company than today, here in Dublin, in the US, or anywhere else in the world. The issue is a lot of people don't realize that. So just to kind of share a little bit my insights, like the global startup community is a reality. It's happening everywhere. We have this massive, vibrant community. Access to technology. You don't need to go to Silicon Valley to access servers. It's kind of obvious. The cloud has changed that forever. Multiple channels, whether it's the Apple App Store or the Salesforce App Exchange, all those marketplaces make it available, make it possible for you to sell globally overnight. Support for large companies, Salesforce, Microsoft, Amazon, all those companies have startup programs, as well as non-tech companies as well. So there's this surface contact that's happening between corporations and startups that make it easy for you to win. Exciting career choice. That's one of my favorites. When I graduated, not a lot of people wanted to be CEO of a startup. Now it's kind of a commonly agreed, scenario out of business school or engineering school. So it's really something legit and that people expect from you. And last but not least, access to capital. You have a lot of VCs and investors, crowdfunding, all those things have made it easy to create a company. Pretty obvious, right? And it's the case anywhere in the world. That said, it's easier for everybody as a result. It's not only easier for people who have no knowledge, it's easier for everybody. So how those guys manage to get to that scale? Dave and John will discuss this. We're trying to decipher that and how you can actually extract yourself from all that energy. So first of all, startup failed because they lack customers, not funding. I just wanted to put it out there. And so focus on your customers. You heard from Bill this morning, who had a great career at Salesforce, Zendesk, and Slack. He learned that as well, customer centricity. We take it for granted. This is something critical. And this is what's going to make or break your company, not necessarily the amount of money you raise. I think we can discuss that later on. And actually, just to prove my point, 3 quick learnings for you before we start the panel. We actually did a research with some of our customers. We realized that actually customer experience is the most important thing beyond pricing and beyond the product itself. So it's kind of a counterintuitive, but that's really based on what our customers told us, and we have a massive panel. So just keep that in mind. Focus on that customer centricity. Make sure that all your team members are part of that customer experience. Not only the customer success team, if you have one, not only the CEO, but everybody in the company, making sure that you are adamant about it. The second thing is, all that stuff is great, but I like this quote, without this execution, what's going to happen? You're just going to hallucinate because it's never been easy to create a company. So one of the things I highly encourage you to consider is to form alliances. A lot of people are very dismissive about partnership. What's a partnership? It could go many different ways. But form alliances, and there is no better place than here. If you want to talk to Salesforce, by all means, do that. And choose an ecosystem that could bring you a lot of things. Legitimacy is an obvious one. Channel, customers, I said investment as well. So just keep that in mind. And you can align yourself with a lot of marketing boways from different tech players. If you're an AI company, maybe you want to check what Salesforce has been talking about when it comes to Einstein and try to piggyback on that wave. And last but not least, all those partnerships / alignments don't mean anything unless you have shared customers to showcase. So really keep that in mind as well. If your BD person signs a deal or have an agreement with a company, make sure you showcase those customers, those shared customers, to make it real. My last point is about culture, and we'll talk about this in the panel, but I just wanted to share that statement with you. I don't know how many of you in the room would consider themselves as millennials. I don't think I am one. I'm kind of on the border. But 77% of them think they need to work for a company that has a sense of purpose. So I would ask yourself, for some of you who are founders or building a company or intending to build a company, how attractive is your company on that front? Are you a company that can actually not only attract but also retain talents, knowing that kind of fact? And it's going to be good for your business if you do so. It was one of the recipes of success for Salesforce. We invented a model back in 1999 called the 1-1-1 model. I won't go into details right now, but you're going to attract like-minded people, employees, partners, customers, and that could really make a difference in a very busy ecosystem. And you want to have a company that people want to support. You heard this morning a bunch of examples of it, with a nice, identity, nice logo, nice look and feel, but also a nice culture, And of course, it can have a good impact, right? It's a small thing. It's usually a very easy solution to make when you're small. It becomes harder as you get bigger. You have a board and a lot of third parties and stakeholders. But so I would really encourage you to check that out and check one of the initiatives that's actually pretty big and getting a lot of traction called the Pledge 1%. So I won't go into details, but if you're curious enough, just Google Pledge 1%. So with that, those 3 learnings, those are the things like I'm seeing in my work every day in San Francisco, in the Salesforce incubators, working with a lot of startups. But we'll try to double-click a little bit in the debate and maybe relate to those points with my 2 fellow panelists, John and Dave. So why don't we start with a quick introduction? I'm going to sit down with you, but before I do so, Dave, why don't, you're the local. Your company is probably very well known by the local, Dublin-based founders. Since you sell to a lot to airlines, I was going to say you might be some sort of dreamliners of the tech ecosystem here in Dublin. So I hope it's a good compliment. But why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yep, thanks Ludovic. I'm Dave O'Flanagan. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Boxever. Our product, the Customer Intelligence Cloud, is used by some of the world's leading travel brands today, companies like Emirates, Air New Zealand, Finnair, Brussels, a whole host of others. Recently signed one closer to home, Aer Lingus, to help them transform the way they market, the way they sell, and the way they service their customers. I guess we solve 2 big challenges for these guys. The first is our customer data platform helps them unify data from disparate sources within their organization. So there could be anywhere up to 15 or 25 different systems that contain customer information. We bring that together to give them a view of every one of their customers. And the second piece is we enable them to work out what the right next best action is or right next best offer is for their customer, regardless of channel. So that, that's really applying artificial intelligence and machine learning to work out who and what and why a customer wants to buy or what we should offer them. So, you can think of us as the brain within the organization that sits kind of one step behind the email tool or the web content management system or the contact center platform. And we're working out who the customer is and what they want next. So for instance, with most of our customers, the ads that you receive from most of our airline customers will be hyper-personalized using the information from Boxever. The on-site recommendations received on the website or mobile is driven by us. And we're doing some pretty exciting stuff in the real world, in the physical world as well, where we're now delivering upgrades to people on the plane if, 1, the customer is of a certain lifetime value, and 2, there's available business class upgrades there. So I think we see the customer experience as something, kind of a continuum from the digital into the physical, and we're working with some really exciting brands to make that a reality. We're 60 people, headquartered here in Dublin. We've got a presence in the UK and in the US. We're venture backed, so we're backed by Polaris Partners, a top-tier US VC on the East Coast. We've raised 17 million to date. To date, we've been really focused on the airline and travel space. I guess the next exciting evolution for Boxever is that we've just started to deploy our technology in sectors outside of travel, in financial services and utilities, and we see a huge market opportunity there.
Congratulations, guys. Amazing trajectory so far. So, John, what about you? Tell us more.
Good afternoon. I'm John Thompson, and I've got experiences with 2 entrepreneurial SaaS projects to share with you this afternoon. So I guess I was quite an early adopter of SaaS as an entrepreneurial opportunity because I co-founded my first SaaS business in 2001. That was a platform for doing large procurement. So our vision at the time was people were buying books and CDs on the internet. We thought the internet could be used to buy things like stadiums and battleships. It sounds like a crazy idea, but it worked, and the UK government in particular standardized on it, and the platform is very much alive and well today. I sold it to a FTSE 250 company in 2008. It's been used on 10,000 projects worth a combined total of $350 billion. Stayed with it for a couple of years after I sold it, and then I really wanted to do it again, because it's really fun and technology had moved on. I just didn't want to work with a vertical as difficult as government again, so I ended up choosing retailers. So I figure I've done the most two difficult verticals, and I'm now with a company called User Replay, based in Reading in the UK, which is in the customer experience analytics space. So we help retailers, financial service companies, and travel companies really help identify those segments of customers who arrive at a website with the intention of buying something but don't because they hit struggle and frustration. It must have happened to all of you. You've been on an e-commerce site, it's driven you nuts, and you've gone somewhere else. So our technology is all about finding those segments, and through session replay and through the provision of the underlying code that ran in the client's browser, help resolve that and deliver more revenue to the retailers. We're partway through the journey. We've raised about $10 million. We have 45 people, 10 in the US. Actually, 63% of our revenues come from the US, and we're growing steadily. And I guess that's me.
All right, what a great intro. So now you at least know who you're talking to in terms of stage, type of funding and type of companies. The good news is you're totally on topic, right? You help customers engage better with their customers. So at least my point number one is highly justified by your businesses. So when I engage with early stage founders, they usually have a hard time answering the question is what long-term success for you. Some are maybe naive and answer very quickly like IPO. But I think with more mature entrepreneurs like you, now that you've probably been thinking about it with yourself, with your family, with your team, etc. What's long-term success for your companies today? Before we go, into the mistakes and things that you should avoid doing, right? What's success for you?
We set out with a pretty simple vision, right? We wanted to help big organizations be smarter every time they interact with customers, and we felt, and we still do feel that creates unique opportunities to create new revenue streams for the organization, and also potentially reduce costs, but more importantly, create value for the end consumer and create a better customer experience. So long-term success is, for me personally, is realizing that vision. So by that I mean that our customers, our organizations that we work with, are very content with our service and can really realize the value that we've seen from the solution. I think the second part to that, and it's something that we're really focused on in Boxever, is I want to go to work every morning. I want to feel like I want to go to work every morning. I want to come into work. I want to know when I look around, people are engaged and enthused and feel like we're on that mission. So that's really a personal thing for me, and I think that's different from long-term success for the business, I would say, because we're a venture-backed company, and very simply, long-term success, like some of the stats that you showed for Salesforce, long-term success for the company is how much enterprise value we can create in the shortest period of time. And the bedrock of having solid customers that are happy with your service, really engaged employees, allows you to build a platform to accelerate revenue. So ultimately, long-term success is, can we realize some sort of equity event or exit at some point in the future? But I don't think it's almost impossible to build a business with that in mind. You build a business to focus on execution. How can you scale the people, how can you scale the customer base, and how can you scale your sales? And if you do that long-term objective of realizing equity and realizing value and liquidity for all your shareholders will be a reality.
Yeah, makes sense. Couldn't agree more in terms of the way you think about it. So John, you have yourself a company behind you, so it sounds like you already have some sort of legacy. And so what's success for this particular venture for you?
So we define success as one of our company values, and we define it quite precisely as we want to give every one of our customers at least 50 times back their subscription price in terms of additional revenue. So that drives us, and when we succeed in doing that, it's obviously very satisfying. But I guess the question comes at another level, and I mean, for me, I'm not a naturally creative person, so I can't do pieces of art that kind of survive me. So entrepreneurial creativity with SaaS is actually really important to me, and I love meeting up with my old company and hearing about all the cool things they're doing and how they're growing and what they're doing. So what I want for User Replay is that the business can carry on delivering that customer value on an enduring basis. So, when I'm retired, I can look back not only on my kids and what they've achieved, but on my 2 companies and their success. So I'm very driven by creating something that does really well without me and goes on to do good things in the market for many years.
Cool. So when you started your business, the title of the session, it was Build and Scale. It's probably easier to create a company now, but still, can you share with us, some of the things that you did at the very beginning just to establish this trajectory that were very beneficial to the business and across the board, right? We discussed many different things. I think, defining your market, the market focus is something I know, John, it's almost like your business. So maybe, John, keep going. What would be something that you remember as you were establishing the build of that company that you would share with the audience?
I mean, I was very fortunate in my 20s, and this was before SaaS was invented, showing my age a bit. So in the late 90s, I worked in a very successful software startup based in Oxford, which sold just as the tech boom started to collapse. And the day it was announced, I talked to the founder who'd just made $26 million and asked him really what was the secret. I told him I had an ambition to do what he had done, and he said it's two very simple things, really. One is, everything you do takes twice as long as you plan and costs twice as much money, and you need to have a plan to still survive and thrive in that eventuality. And the other one is, never kid yourself that it's not all about people. So I listened to him, and those have been 2 really good sort of mantras that I think have helped me through my career. Is if things take a bit longer than you would like, are you okay to go bust, or do you actually want to survive that? So those have been 2 defining roles for me that I've taken into the start of both of these companies, is making sure that people decisions are absolutely at the forefront, and making sure I surround myself with people who are better than me, and having a plan B and plan C up my sleeve.
All right, cool. Dave, any question? Actually, a quote before you think about it. Like Mark Benioff said in a very famous quote that you usually overestimate what you can accomplish in a year and underestimate what you can accomplish in 10 years. So it's kind of similar to what you're saying, right? Kind of. Cool, Dave. You have to remember it's a few years back, but.
Yeah, I guess probably the number one thing we did early on was we focused on a vertical.
Yep.
I think that was. We had a lot of expertise, so I was part of a business we exited in 2007. We did analytics for mobile telcos, spent some time selling into digital in the airline space. So we had a really good view of the airline space. I'm a math stats guy by trade, so we thought we could bring a product to market in that space. We've always developed we had a horizontal product, but we had a vertical go-to-market, and that was very, very specific. So when we sell into some of these organizations, we're competing with big in-house IT builds with the likes of Oracle or IBM or so forth. And the reason we could credibly compete and win at over 20 airlines around the world now is that we had a deep, deep understanding of their pain points, of their industry, and we were able to take a complex data platform and really, really focus it in terms of their pain points, and that allowed us to win in I would say in deals early on that we really had no right to win. We were 7 guys in Dublin competing against 15 guys on a sales team in market and on the other side of the world, right?
And how early was it? Was it literally after 6 months after you created the company, after a year and a half, or? About
6 months in, we realized that we didn't want to be a poor man's IBM, as an example, and if we were gonna compete, we needed to focus. And I think as we've evolved, I think now we've got a really strong referenceable base of big organizations globally. So as we talk to utilities or financial services companies such as utilities, insurance, or banks, those references that we have, the likes of Emirates and others, really, really stand to us. Because if that company is trying to build a truly customer-centric brand, can use a technology like us, and they're based 10 hours away, we can really have an opportunity to sell to similar organizations here with the same ambitions, regardless of industry.
Just to continue the journey, what would be the tipping point in your go-to-market that got you to where you are today? Was it as early as this, or was there any other signal that you would call the tipping point of your business?
Yeah, a couple of things, right? So we had developed a platform. It's a platform, right? So it aggregates customer data. You apply advanced analytics, and you get a decision. It's just an API in the cloud, ultimately. So that's great. So you're selling capability all the time, but many times it's very, very difficult to sell capability because it looks slightly different to everybody. And when you're trying to establish a predictable sales process where you understand the types of people you're engaging with, the pain points you're trying to address, as we evolved past the first few customers and we could see how our customers were using the platform, we could then take the value that they were creating, the different types of use cases that they were creating, and use that as a way to sell value rather than sell capability. And that was where we really started to be able to kind of unhook in terms of our go-to-market strategy. Now, it's a balance because ultimately you need to be able to sell the underlying capability, but if you want to add more salespeople, it's very hard for salespeople to sell a kind of a nebulous platform, right? Yep. So I think the key thing for us in our evolution was understanding the really simple use cases or understandable use cases that one, our customers could understand, and two, our sales team could sell.
Cool. So John, maybe you can elaborate on your own tipping point for your company. It sounds like we discussed that, and how did you experience that? I know for a fact like you also had to say no a lot to keep on your roadmap before you hit that tipping point. So maybe you can share more with
that. I mean, what's interesting, two different companies, and the tipping point was definitely identifiable in the journey for both companies, but it came about for very different reasons. So in my first company, the procurement company, what really made the company fly was really understanding the emotional drivers of the persona we were selling to. So we were selling the software on the basis of better value for money for the taxpayer, sort of a big vision, but we didn't really apply it to anybody's particular needs or careers. And what we discovered was people in our buyer group were really afraid of actually getting the process wrong and breaking EU procurement law and having their careers ruined by being sued by a losing bidder. And once we found out that people were afraid of that, we went in and sold a compliance solution and a don't get sued solution, which is way more popular than the big vision we had. And the big vision of getting value for money for the taxpayer ended up being a side product, really, of compliance. So a bit of a sad and cynical story, but the difference it made to the business was absolutely shocking. So I learned from that you always need to understand the emotional sort of drivers in the persona. And at User Replay, we suddenly started getting a lot of calls from America and from big American brands showing interest in the product. This was before we were at all established in the US. And we realized that had really come from the acquisition of a competitor and that the customers of that competitor weren't really happy with the direction it was going in. And Gartner had happened to decide that we were a good alternative. So, it was like somebody had flicked a light switch on for us at that particular point in time, which we really could not take any credit for. And I think, one thing I've learned in 21 years of startups is whatever anyone else tells you, luck is a really important factor. And I think it's good to remember that. And it's good to keep you humble, and it's also good to keep you from getting depressed when you hit a bad phase. So the first time there was a bit of method, and the second tipping point was more like good luck.
So John, to keep going, trying to infuse some of the question from the audience, like very quickly, NPS, do you use it?
Not formally, no, but we do.
Very quickly.
Yeah, we talk to our customers very regularly, and we have somebody outside of the sales and the customer success function who talks to the customers and gets a sense of where they're at independently. Yeah. And we find that feedback is gold dust, particularly when it's painful feedback, actually.
Yeah, of course. Dave, how did you create your team after this tipping point? You got the traction, 60 people now. What's the composition of your team, customer success, sales, etc.? Yeah. Rough numbers.
At the start, we were just product engineering, data science. Since then, we've kind of, probably, I'd say about 30 people in product and engineering, 10 in sales, 15 customer success, and 5 in other.
Okay. One thing we discussed is, I infused that very quickly earlier, is like, as you grow that team to handle all those customer requests, you may or may not use NPS or anything like this, like to assess the satisfaction of your customers. How do you say no? How do you say no as you scale, having much bigger customers? You told me yesterday they are basically anywhere in the world. How do you say no to keep your roadmap on track? Any tip that's very actionable for those guys who probably will experience the same question?
Yeah, like number one thing, you gotta protect your product, right? So I think we sell to big customers. The requests come thick and fast about all sorts of crazy things that they must have. You know, from our perspective, I think when we engage with a customer and they have this the solution architect on the other side has a must-have request for some crazy feature, we'll try to sit down, understand what he's actually trying to achieve, hopefully sort it out in terms of what the product capability does today. Yep. But if it doesn't, you know, sometimes you got to say no, and you got to say no for the good of the company and the good of the product. I would say, it's all very easy up here to say that. We haven't said no every time, you know, we've made our mistakes, but I think if you take away anything from this, protect your products.
Cool. John, anything to add on that
I totally agree, and it's the hardest thing, and especially when there's a deal with a real chunk of ARR from a great brand. But I think the number one rule, because I don't think anyone's got a completely clean sheet on this one, is never get into multiple code bases for multiple customers. I mean, that really is a killer, but you always need to focus more than feels comfortable. And even after 16 years of running SaaS businesses, I still say yes when I should say no, and regret it. So I can't preach to you on it, but yeah, what he said.
Cool. So time went very fast. Dave, John, thanks so much. I know I wanted to extract even more wisdom based on the conversation we had. I know one of the topics that will be discussed right after is people, as well as culture. That's usually reflected from the CEO. So, and again, I'm sure those guys will be available if you have more questions. Thanks for your time. That was a pleasure to have this panel. Thanks for attending, everyone.
Thanks very much.